Ever get that, like, eerie feeling? Like
Right. Yeah.
someone's watching you online, tracking every click you make.
Oh, absolutely. It's wild, really, when you think about it. Privacy, it's been like this core concern since like the dawn of the internet.
Totally. It's like this tension was baked into the whole thing from the start. And that's what we're diving into today, the past, present, future, the whole shebang of online privacy.
Huh.
And we've got some like really cool stuff to dig into.
Yeah.
We're going way back to 1993, a cypherpunk's manifesto.
Yeah, classic.
It's a cornerstone of like the early internet privacy movement. And then we're jumping to the Cloaked Network white paper. It lays out a wild vision for a whole new kind of private network.
It's like a generational conversation. But the
Yeah.
same questions keep coming up. Freedom, control, all that in our digital world.
All right, so let's start with these cypherpunks. The name makes them sound like, hackers straight out of a movie. Who were they?
So picture this. It's the 80s, early 90s, and you've got this group of like seriously bright, kind of rebellious minds. They were deep into cryptography and really skeptical of any kind of centralized authority.
I'm getting some serious hacker vibes, not gonna lie.
Oh, yeah, they were the real deal. They believed privacy wasn't just about hiding secrets. It was about like having control over your own identity online, your information. Especially back then when the whole digital world was still kind of new.
So, rebellious, tech-savvy, and way ahead of their time. Got it.
Totally. And their manifesto, it's eerie almost how it reads like a prediction of the stuff we're dealing with now. They were saying true freedom online meant choosing what you share about yourself, not having it like automatically scooped up and, monetized.
And they saw anonymous transactions as a huge part of that, right? But
Yeah.
wasn't the whole point of the internet to be open, to share everything?
Yeah, and that's the thing. They got that. They saw the potential, how the internet could connect people and information like never before. But they also saw the other side, the surveillance, the control, all of that. They even wrote privacy is necessary for an open society in the electronic age. Like, to really have open discussion, to have real innovation, people need to be able to do stuff online without being tracked.
Which is why those anonymous transactions were so important to them. Digital signatures, e-cash, stuff we almost take for granted now.
Right. They knew that if every single transaction, every little thing you did online could be linked back to you, it'd create this like massive record of your entire life, everything you bought, every place you visited. It's a lot of power to hand over to like corporations or the government.
It's crazy how right they were, especially now. With data breaches happening all the time, online privacy feels more like, I don't know, a luxury than a right these days.
But we've got VPNs now, Tor, all these tools meant to keep us anonymous. Aren't those enough?
I mean, they're a step in the right direction. But this Cloaked Network white paper, it argues that these solutions, while groundbreaking in their time, they're starting to show their limit.
So, VPNs, they make all these promises, right? Mask your IP address, encrypt your traffic, all that. But there's often a catch. A lot of these VPN providers, they say they have no-log policies, but they've been caught storing user data. Some have even had security breaches themselves.
So you're putting all your trust in this VPN company, hoping they're actually doing what they say.
Exactly. And then there's Tor. With its network of volunteer servers, it's been amazing for anonymity. But it's not perfect. It can be slow, unreliable. And this white paper, it points out how Tor might be vulnerable to, like, really sophisticated attackers, people who can exploit weaknesses in how it's designed.
So both VPNs and Tor have their weaknesses, and that's where this Cloaked Network comes in, right? Claiming to be the more secure solution. What's their big idea?
They're proposing a next-gen mixnet. It's like taking the basic concept behind Tor, bouncing your traffic through a bunch of servers to hide where it's coming from, and like injecting it with a super boost of technology.
A mixnet on steroids. Yeah, I'm listening. How's that even work?
Okay, so imagine this. Instead of your data going straight to a website, let's say, it's like it gets chopped up into tiny bits, like a puzzle, and then each of those pieces, your encrypted data, gets shuffled around, sent through all these different servers all over the place. Each server only knows where it got the piece from and where it's sending it next, not the full picture of what you're doing.
No, it's like trying to track like a single raindrop in a hurricane.
Exactly. But the Cloaked Network, they don't stop there. They're using some really clever tech to make it even better. Like they're building the whole system on HTTP3. That's like the newest version of how websites talk to each other.
Okay, I'm going to bite. HTTP3. What's so special about it for privacy?
The cool thing is HTTP3, it's got these features built in that make analyzing traffic so much harder. It's like trying to overhear a conversation at I don't know, a rock concert where everyone's speaking a language you don't even understand. They call it hiding in plain sight.
That's pretty clever, I gotta admit. But how do they make sure these servers, or nodes, or whatever they're called, are actually reliable and trustworthy? What's to stop some of them from being, like, hacked or messed up?
That's where Bitcoin comes in. The Cloaked Network, it actually rewards people with Bitcoin for running these reliable nodes. So everyone involved, they've got something to lose if they mess up. Plus, they're using something called Shamian notes. It's like digital cash, super anonymous, for making payments inside the network.
So it's decentralized, kind of like Bitcoin itself. The
Oh.
system encourages people to play it straight.
Got it. And that's a big part of what makes the Cloaked Network different. It's not just some software, they're building a whole community around this.
They're taking that whole cypherpunk thing, that love for decentralization, giving individuals more control, giving it a, like, 21st century upgrade. But tech is only as good as the people building it, right? Who are the brains behind this whole thing?
And that is where it gets really interesting. These founders, they've got some serious history in the world of privacy tech.
So spill the beans. Who are these privacy pioneers?
Jonathan Wilkins and Jeremy Hill, the guys behind Cloaked Network. And get this. They both got their start at a company called Zero Knowledge Systems back in the early 2000s.
Zero knowledge systems. That rings a bell.
Yeah, they were like the rock stars of privacy back then, even before Tor was a thing. They were building some of the earliest privacy tech, even worked on something called the Freedom Network.
Well, hold up. So we've gone full circle. These guys were in the trenches with the original cypherpunks, working on this stuff decades ago. That's quite a resume.
I know, right? It's like they picked up the torch and said, we're taking this to the next level, building something even stronger, even more resilient. And it's not just ancient history either. Cloaked Wireless
Cloaked Wireless. What's that all about?
seems to be their first attempt at building a privacy-focused product for, like, everyday use. It's a secure private wireless service currently running in the U.S.
So they're not just talking the talk. They're actually building real-world stuff. Makes this whole Cloaked Network thing even more interesting. But let's be real. Building a whole new internet infrastructure for privacy, that's a tall order. You think they can pull it off?
Ambitious, absolutely. But it's got that same spirit, that cypherpunk drive to create systems that are, like, outside the traditional power structures. Plus, technology's come a long way. We've got the tools now, and the awareness is there, too.
True, but even with the best tech, there's always the human element. Are people really ready to embrace a truly privacy-focused internet? Or are we too hooked on convenience? Clicking accept all cookies and moving on with our lives.
That's the million-dollar question, right? Convenience often wins in the short term. But as data breaches keep happening, as surveillance becomes more and more common, I think people are starting to want more control over their digital lives.
Especially with our online and offline lives getting more and more intertwined. It's not just about protecting what we do online anymore. It's about, like, safeguarding our whole identity in this hyper-connected world.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole conversation about Cloaked Network, about the push for digital privacy, so important. It reminds us that we do have a choice in how the internet evolves.
It's like that line from the Cypherpunk Manifesto, right? Privacy is not secrecy. A private matter is something one doesn't want the whole world to know, but a secret matter is something one doesn't want anybody to know. Privacy is the power to selectively reveal oneself to the world.
Powerful stuff. And man, is it ever relevant today. But if Cloaked Network really wants to make a splash, they're going to have to convince people that privacy is worth fighting for. It's worth demanding from those companies and institutions that, let's face it, hold a lot of power online.
We need to show that a more private internet isn't just possible, it's better for everyone. More trust, more freedom, and ultimately a fairer digital world.
Totally. They've got to bridge that gap between the hardcore tech and us regular folks, because a mind-blowing mixnet might impress a crypto whiz, but it's the real-world benefits that'll win over everyone else.
It's like the early days of the internet itself. It started as this niche thing for, like, academics and techies, and then boom, it explodes, changes everything. How we live, work, connect, the whole deal.
Makes you wonder, could Cloaked Network or something like it follow that same path? Are we on the verge of, like, Privacy 3.0, a whole new era where individual control and data ownership are built-in features, not afterthoughts?
Now that's a thought. But let's say, hypothetically speaking, that this dream of a truly private internet, it actually comes true. What then? What happens when people have that kind of anonymity and control?
Now that is the question that keeps me up at night. It's the next chapter, and it's full of, well, incredible possibilities and some pretty unsettling questions, too.
It really does make you think, you know? Give people the tools to be totally anonymous online. Who knows what they'd do? Would it be this, like, utopia of free speech and individuality or, well, something else entirely?
It's the oldest question in the book, right? Human nature. Except now you add technology that can like amplify everything. The internet, it's always been this double-edged sword, used for good, used for bad. And the more we push those technological boundaries, the bigger those ethical questions get.
So where do we even go from here? How do we wrap our heads around anonymity, responsibility, what we actually want the future of the internet to be?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And there's no easy answer, no magic solution. But for me, it starts with understanding, like really getting it. We need to move past these simple ideas of privacy good or privacy bad, have those tough conversations about the compromises, the potential, yeah, and the risks too.
We need to remember that technology itself, it isn't inherently good or bad. It reflects our values, the choices we make. It's our responsibility, all of us.
100%. And those choices, they're only getting harder as tech gets more advanced. Look at Cloaked Network. Say they actually managed to build this super private internet. It's not just going to be activists or, whistleblowers using it. It'll be accessible to everyone.
And that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, most people, they're not out there trying to take down governments or anything. They just want to live their lives online with a little bit of privacy.
Right, they want some control, especially in a world where every move you make online is tracked, analyzed, and, let's be honest, sold off to the highest bidder. That desire for privacy, that control over your own data, it's only going to get stronger.
So maybe Cloaked Network, even if it doesn't become like the answer to online privacy, maybe it's a sign of what's to come. Like we're moving towards a future where people demand that control and where the tech actually exists to give it to them.
Now that's a future worth working towards, even if we don't know exactly what it looks like yet. And, if there's one thing we can learn from those cypherpunks, it's that fighting for privacy, it's not a one-time thing. It's a constant back and forth. Trying to find that balance between what we can do as individuals and what we're responsible for as a society.
They were raising these issues way back when, and it's taken us this long to really start paying attention.
It shows you the future isn't something that just happens, right? It's what we choose to make it, through the choices we make every day, the actions we take, and honestly, how willing we are to challenge the way things are.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of online privacy, we'll leave you with this. If you could build the internet from scratch, what would it look like? What would be most important to you?
What compromises would you make? These are the questions we all need to be asking ourselves as we try to find our place in this crazy digital world.
Because the future of privacy, the future of the internet itself, it's not predetermined. It's up to us to decide.